Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another episode of How to Speak Maintenance. I am joined today with Becca from Texas Department Association, as well as two individuals that are going to help us talk about our amazing conversation today. So with us, we have Paul Rhodes, who is he was a national maintenance trainer for NAAEI for almost 10 years. And is formerly the lead HD Supply Customer Training Department as well. And he's also the director of maintenance for the Life Properties, which is a growing management company in Texas with 26 plus years of experience. And he's also speaking at two sessions, I guess, in Chicago currently. Is that correct?
That's it.
Man, that's great. And you started out as a groundsman and held all the positions in between, and that's amazing. And that means that you know and you understand what our maintenance employees are going through. So I'm excited to have you on today. So thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I'm honored to be here.
Yeah, and then we also have Chelsea Odom, which is she's with Camden. She is our learning and development manager, and she heads 2 maintenance and 3 sales soft skill training specialists. And you were a teacher before that? Is that correct?
That's right. Everybody's favorite subject, which is English. I actually came to Camden as with some experience in the college arena. So everybody's favorite subject is English, right? I did high school English and then taught at a local college here in Houston before I came to Camden.
Well, that's impressive. I'm glad both of you are on, because our topic today is about maintenance training, and it's very important to myself and to the industry, because as you know, if you don't grow and you don't learn and develop your skills, you're not gonna grow in your career as well. So last month we spoke about the whiteboard, the dry erase board, and removing it from our offices and increasing productivity. And while we were talking about it, we got heavy into maintenance training and the importance of it. So I think a great way to start this conversation is the importance of training and the risk behind not making training a priority. So, big thing is not employees not finding the reward, right? And we find that we're all about tickets and turns, and we're all about making sure that those jobs are done, and making time for training, it becomes a little difficult. So, Chelsea, maybe you can talk to us about how it'll impact profits as well.
Absolutely. So, two of the big reasons why we hear that, training isn't really a focus is we get busy. We have, our day-to-day that we're focusing on. And, essentially training isn't, for a lot of organizations, part of their compensation, right? So I'm really glad that we're talking about compensation, because many see training and comp or bonus structures as separate entities within an organization. And in reality, your people are not going to see the value of training if they cannot see a direct tie from objectives of the training that they'll be attending to how it really will benefit them, the what's in it for me, if you will. So you have to look at the training programs that you're designing, and are the learning objectives really aligning with the comp and bonus structure in your organization? So here's an example. If you go to XYZ training and apply what you've learned, studies show, or the metrics that you've tracked, that you will on average be able to improve your turn days by 2. Just a quick example. So we have to really create opportunities for our people to participate in effective development programs that are measured by how well the training solution improves their performance and meets business needs. And the metrics you analyze to see if your training programs are effective are not or should be tied to performance metrics that your team members' comp and bonus structure are based off of, right? So this equation doesn't really begin with learning and development like everybody thinks. Jason, can you guess the number one reason why people typically leave a company?
Oh, we've all heard the saying, right? Is people don't leave a company, they leave their boss, right?
Exactly. A lot of times we think, because we read the exit surveys or whatever else, and we think, oh, it's because of higher wages. Well, when you read that on your exit surveys, know that your people are telling you their manager did not develop them and they did not feel like they were able to grow within the organization. And it all starts with leadership making their number one focus developing their people, not letting them get busy with the day to day, and not letting them see the rewards or the ROI from attending the training. And if your team members take advantage of those effective training programs that you offer, you're going to have that never stop learning mindset. And you're naturally going to reach those higher bonus potentials and be ready to move up in the company and potentially get a pay raise through promotion, right? So it all has to be linked together. And that's why training needs to be a huge focus, especially from leadership partnering with the L&D department.
Yeah, I couldn't say it any better. Paul, speak to us about productivity. I mean, how does training increase or decrease productivity?
This kind of goes exactly to what Chelsea was talking about, to where if you take XYZ training and you complete it successfully and you decrease those metrics that you're following, you said a 2-day turn, to where you take 2 days off your standard turn rate that you're looking at. Well, that from a company standpoint, that's a good thing. Productivity has increased and improved. But a lot of times where we as leaders miss the mark is translating that into a personal benefit, to where, yes, as a company, as the property, as an entity, it improved. But that means that it hit our bottom line, exactly what you're referring to, Chelsea. Well, are we taking that one step further and moving the benefit, not just at the property level? Are we moving it to our technician? Are we making that connection in a personal standpoint? I mean, I'm wondering if that might be a little bit of that equation that we're referring to for turnover, to where, okay, great, my boss says I need to take XYZ training. Great, I sit through XYZ training and all it does is be good for the property. Yes, I know, salespeople are taught. You look at somebody and on their forehead, you put the letters WIIFM with them. What's in it for me? Well, what's in it for me as a maintenance technician to take this training when, great, okay, we can turn an apartment faster. But, I was turning the apartment before and I still had a job. So I made X amount of dollars. What's in it for me? Why should I spend the brain power to learn something new? If I'm already doing the job and you're satisfied with it, what's the benefit for me? So as leaders, exactly, Chelsea, what you were talking to, as leaders, a part of our job is making that connection in a meaningful way. And that meaningful way could be enhanced productivity, Jason. It could be an easier day. It could be working less. From a preventive maintenance standpoint, the more we teach our technicians about preventive maintenance, the less call outs on the weekends or in the evenings they have. But as a part of leadership, we have to make that connection. And if we're not making that connection, then we're missing the boat.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And Chelsea, you made a point in one of our previous conversations about giving people attention. And if you don't train them unintentionally, you're saying you don't care about them. And I think that hits on what Paul's talking about as well in regards to what's in it for me, right?
Absolutely.
You want to talk about that?
So it's actually based off of a book that we read as a company by Marcus Buckingham called 9 Lies About Work. If you've not read it, it will absolutely revolutionize how your organization reevaluates your employee experience. But he refutes the idea that people want feedback, and what people really want is attention and to know that you care as their leader. And if you don't take the time to train your people, what message is that really sending to your team members? Well, you're unintentionally sending the message that you don't care enough about them and they aren't worth the time and energy and money it will take to develop them. And I know you're going to post a picture of this really great infographic from HR Magazine, but they did a recent study that showed companies who invest $1,500 or more per employee per year on training average 24% higher profit margins. And to your point, Paul, it's really about understanding that each employee has the WIFM, like you were talking about, something that's really important to them that has to be the motivator for them wanting to grow, wanting to develop, and then leadership figuring out what that WIFM is, or what their red thread, as Marcus Buckingham calls it, is, and being able to pluck that and figure out, okay, how can we get this individual person to really leverage their strengths to be their best self, but also on a team and organization level, how can we leverage the strengths of everybody on our team, and what does the development look like for each person? Because it's going to look different. Every single person has different experiences and skills and different strengths that you have to cue into as a leader. And that's what it's all about.
Chelsea, I went ahead and put that book into the comments. So
Perfect.
I saw Paul writing that
Thank
down.
you.
So if you're looking for that, it's in the comments, and Facebook doesn't feel like letting me add an attachment. So I'll go ahead and add that after the call is done.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, this is a great conversation. I mean, between having a heavy workload between tickets and turns and not having the time to be able to provide training to our teams, and then making sure our people feel as if it's beneficial to them as well, it's all important, and it's a juggling act. I've also heard in my past, well, if I teach them and then they leave, then I'm losing that asset, that time that I spent with that employee. So but maybe that goes back to what you were saying, Paul, where if they don't feel as if it was benefiting them at all, then yeah, somebody offers them $1 more an hour, then they might take off. So
well, and yeah, that is so key to where we as individuals, maintenance technicians, and other all employees, but since I'm a maintenance guy, I will speak as one. We're focused on problem solving. Problem. As an individual, I am not making as much money as I would like to. Solution: gain more responsibility. If I cannot gain more responsibility to enable me to make more money here, then I can go somewhere else. I can solve the problem. The challenge, of course, for us as leaders is how do we solve that problem and retain the employee, so that we can grow as an organization, we can grow as a property, we can grow as a company. There are various solutions, and I've read a little bit about the book you referenced there, Chelsea. We actually approach it both individually and from a team front, to where for us right now, because of the pandemic and because of the decrease in the opportunities that we have for hands-on classroom training, or pulling everybody together as a group, we've been focusing a lot on e-learning opportunities. Companies like we're tied with Grace Hill, to where we use all of their platform, and then we also supplement that with Yardi and a couple other products like that. But what we did from a training standpoint, not just for maintenance, but for all of our team, is we set up a bonus structure to where, as a part of their employment, we set a requirement, we set a deadline of, for the month of August, you need to attend these classes. And if you do, you receive a bonus. But we took it one step further, to where not only is it you as an individual, but if your team attends those classes, then they get that bonus too, or the team is bonused as a whole. And that kind of recognizes the fact that we have, when someone is in training, they're not doing, at that moment, productive work. That means in that moment, if they're sitting in front of a computer for a few hours, for those hours a moment, the rest of the team has to kind of pick up the slack, because the job still has to get done. But it is an understanding that way it's a team endeavor as well as an individual endeavor. So that's how we're approaching it.
That's great, Chelsea. I think I I interrupted you as you were about to talk about different tools or tricks that you have for teaching employees.
No, that's okay. What you said just reminded me of a quote, and I can't remember, it might have been Richard Branson, if I remember correctly. He was in an interview and they asked him, what happens if we invest in developing our people and then they leave us? And you know what he said? He goes, well, what happens if we don't and they stay? And it got me thinking about, we're talking about the risks and the rewards of training. And it's really up to us to understand that training is an investment in our greatest resource. Just like Paul was saying, traditionally, we see training as unproductive time, right? But it's going to take time. It consumes a lot of energy. It can cost you money. But that investment is the best one you can make because the ROI is so high and the risk is not investing in your people. Is significant. So that same study that you'll see the infographic in the chat that we shared with you about 24% higher profit margins for companies that invest in training. Well, they also state that disengagement and a lack of training cost organizations over $500 billion yearly. And I believe it, considering the safety risks, legal liability, loss in efficiency, productivity. Paul, you were talking about that earlier, just to name a few of the factors outside of the enormous cost of turnover that it represents. But, I always challenge our learning and development team to really think about training as an investment, because just like Paul said, it is quote unquote unproductive time, right? But you can't just have the reward based on, are you attending training? Because then you get into that mindset of, I'm just going to read all this stuff. I'm just going to take all these classes and not really have a target or some intention behind it. And so you've got to be able to not only measure, are people going to training and is your training effective, but what's happening after they've applied what they've learned in the training. That's where the meat comes from. And that's what we try to focus on as we're designing and developing different learning solutions that meet business needs and certain challenges that we're faced with.
Man, but
so you're not just you're not just measuring like a test for the class. You're actually measuring a change in behavior after the training or after the lesson.
Absolutely. Because, as you're developing learning solutions, you're tying them to things that answer the with them for them, right? So if I attend this training, what's in it for me? What's gonna happen for me and my team? And so if you can show them how they're going to grow, and we do that through pilots and really tracking and measuring performance metrics. Those metrics are in turn tied to their comp and bonus structure, right? So the reward is there. It's not necessarily from going to the training per se, but after the training, if you apply what you've learned, the reward is there.
Man, I love all this conversation. The one thing that comes to my mind, though, is that it must be very difficult to make effective training programs if it's not catered to the way that people learn, though, right? I mean, maybe we can talk about a little bit about how people learn and how you have to, tailor the learning to that individual. Chelsea, you and I spoke a little bit about that. Like, what are your thoughts on how to, properly tailor a program to the different individuals in your company?
Sure. In my background as a teacher, a model that we use quite frequently is the learning pyramid, because this learning pyramid shows knowledge retention rates and how your brain works, right? So keeping in mind that whatever you design, think about this. You do not retain knowledge when you are passively just hearing a lecture, reading an article, listening to a podcast. Those methods are fine, but they've got to be coupled with opportunities to discuss what you learned in a group setting, get hands-on practice doing the steps that you just read about, or teaching others what you learned. So with this in mind, we have a lot of different learning solutions that, no matter if they're online or self-paced, recently we've not been doing face-to-face as much anymore, but we've got a lot of virtual synchronous trainings that we've designed. You just have to understand that you've got to ask your learners to actively participate in the learning process. And you can do that through lots of different methods, breakout room discussions, sharing your perspective and collaborating on different shared documents and using lots of different technology platforms. We've got a few different training methods that we use. I know all of us have been YouTube certified at some point in time in our lives. And we know, especially our maintenance folks, that's where they go for information, right? So we have our own Camden YouTube channel where our L&D team creates videos. We curate videos from our on-site team members who just get their mobile maintenance phone out, shoot a quick video and send it to us so we can edit it. So we've got our own Camden YouTube channel that is pushed straight to our Camden mobile devices that our maintenance teams use so that they can access it in just a few clicks. So it's giving people what they need, where they need it, and an easy way to access it in a way that their brain is going to retain the most information. So lots of different learning solutions that you have to toy around with and really analyze what the best mode is going to be, because we want to increase those retention rates. And there's a lot of things to consider when you are developing different learning solutions.
Yeah, Paul, as National Director of Maintenance, what sort of tricks or tools have you utilized in the past couple of years with COVID and all the craziness?
Well, it's been really a challenge. To be quite honest, I came to Life Properties at the beginning of the pandemic, to where at the beginning of the pandemic, when when everybody was no longer allowed to be in person in, half a mile of each other is what it felt like. For someone like myself, that my entire job was traveling around the country and teaching face to face and shoulder to shoulder. And the Certificate for Apartment Maintenance Technician course, offered at a lot of affiliates here in Texas, is a hands-on course, to where I would fly into town, have parts and pieces and components, and we'd get appliances and we'd take them apart, and shoulder to shoulder, we're right in each other's faces, me and the student, or the students and themselves, doing drywall repair and electrical repair and all of that stuff. Well, the pandemic hit, and instantly the entire calendar emptied. So I made the change back to on-site work and came to Life Properties. So one of the first challenges we had was, how do we develop our maintenance teams in this environment? And Chelsea, I really like your comment of being YouTube certified. That is brilliant. I'm almost thinking maybe we need to, Beckett, maybe TAA needs to come up with a patch or a sticker to put on the golf cart. That's it, YouTube TAA certified. But it is the method by which we deliver content, by which we get our technicians to understand and our employees to understand and increase their skills, are still the same as what we had before the pandemic. We just have to modify it based on what we're allowed to do. There is still a lot of online learning. A friend of mine is a content developer writing maintenance for Grace Hill. And he's got, 38 years of experience in the field creating this content. So instead of having, we've all seen it, the static picture of the lines that come in where you've got the narration. Instead, he's creating comic books, and they're using more video. And Chelsea, to your point, it's much more interactive because you've got to have those touch points. Becca, you made reference to the fact that I'm making notes. On a venue like this, I need to create opportunities for myself to interact with the content, with the knowledge, even just to make notes and write down different things here. I can tell you one of the biggest efforts that we've had internally is reviewing our maintenance teams, the importance of the number one most available training literature and information that they, as technicians out in the field, have access to. And that is the instructions. Whatever our teams are doing, if they're adding chemicals to the pool and they're not quite sure how to do it, read the side of the bottle, read the side of the container. Oftentimes now in our digital world, we think so much of, the cell phone that we forget that all of these manufacturers are required to produce information that goes to it. And that, since they made the whatever contactor or whatever switch or whatever light fixture I'm installing, reference that information directly, then you have something to take to YouTube to get the YouTube certification. And it's amazing once you get those instructions and go from the manufacturer, how many people have taken the instructions on YouTube and they video a shortcut or a way of doing it easier.
A hack.
A hack that changes what the manufacturer intended, which shortens the lifespan or takes away the warranty or decreases or diminishes the benefit of whatever it is that we're working on. So really and truly, the best message that I've been trading and running in this past year with all of my voicemails or in-person experiences is that reminder for RTFI. Read the full instructions. It really, it truly is the way to go. And then you can use YouTube to help explain or enhance whatever the correct way of doing it is.
No, another resource that I wanted to share came from TAAEF has a maintenance council of which Jason is on. Through our conversations, we talked a lot about the lack of value that maintenance teams feel. And I think that investing piece that we talked a lot about will really come into play with that. But another thing that we discussed and then developed as a result of is a list of training opportunities and places where you can go, even if your company isn't offering them, places where you can go, especially if you're new to the industry, to find those training opportunities. So I'm putting those into the chat as well. And I hope people will take a look at it. At that, there's a lot of resources from our supplier partners and other places where you can find some good training as well that companies and individuals can tap into.
That's great, because there's probably smaller operators that can't afford the larger platforms or the technology packages for their employees to get access. So this is all good information. Chelsea, you had talked about a couple programs that I find near and dear to my heart here at Camden. Do you want to talk about Road for a little bit?
Yes, absolutely. And I love that you're putting resources in the chat, Becca, because whatever training programs you design should include elements from all sorts of different resources. We grew up Googling things and having Google curate things for us. And so as learning and development teams kind of figure out, how can we design training, we've really got to model after Google and give our employees a roadmap full of different curated learning solutions. And one of the things that Jason and the learning and development team has partnered to create is our Road to Maintenance Success program. And it's where our techs can apply to go through this sort of leadership boot camp, if you will. And they spend 10 weeks learning the maintenance supervisor role, delving into tools and resources. We have links to different articles and different sources that have really great information. Probably going to include some that you just shared, Becca. Thank you for that. As well as getting to swap communities, because one of the best learnings that can happen is on the job. And so they get to swap communities, learn different asset types, get to shadow different leadership styles. And, in less than 3 years, I think it's been since the program was developed, Jason, we've had 22 promotions so far from the 43 graduates. So it's been really neat to see that program. It's an evolution, but what my favorite part of the program is that those who are really wanting to grow themselves, they apply to be in the program. and we celebrate them when they graduate. And most of the program is self-paced, so they can do it on their own time, which, as we know, with the pandemic and being short-staffed has really been a huge factor in any learning solution that we develop. It has to have some self-paced sort of elements to it. But that is a program that we've seen huge success from, and it's all about including that roadmap kind of style and involving different learning solutions and getting them together to collaborate from across the country. We have different mile marker meetups where they hear from guest speakers and get to share what they're learning in the program. And like I talked about with that learning pyramid of retention, we've seen huge success. So that's one that we're very proud of.
Yeah, I've lived that program. I love the road program. It's been great. It is a challenge though. And it goes back to our original discussion about making time for training, because if I remember correctly, I mean, it's 8 weeks, 15 weeks, something like that. I mean, it's a long program. I don't remember exactly how many weeks it is, but it breaks down every component of being a maintenance supervisor, and it teaches them. And that's honestly what we need to do with everything, right? You know, for example, you have HVAC experience, and to be able to get that experience, you have to learn the different pieces. And, you know, to me, you can know 7 of the 8 steps, but there's one step you might not understand fully, right? Which is why I feel like I'm excited about the YouTubes of the world, right? Because if I just don't know how to pull a vacuum, I know how to do everything else, I just don't know how to pull a vacuum on an HVAC unit. Maybe I might be able to watch a video in the field and be able to get that little bit of knowledge, right? Or just read the instruction manual on
yeah. You know,
although we've all had to put IKEA furniture together, so sometimes the destructions definitely need some YouTube videos tied to them.
That's true. This has been such a great conversation. I feel like we could probably do a part 2 and part 3, Jason.
Yes.
So much knowledge here. Thank you, Paul. And thank you, Chelsea. Jason, thank you as always. We will be back in, what month is this? It's August, right? We'll be back in September at the end of the month, the fourth Wednesday of the month. And we look forward to seeing you then. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks,
It was
Chelsea.
an absolute pleasure.
We'll see you. Bye-bye.